Hi Vernon. Unlike most of my videos where I just wing it, as a tribute to your style, I thought I would compose properly. First of all, I have to say that your videos during this COVID fiasco have been totally on point. Your deep insights and impeccable common sense are always delivered with eloquence, humour and bravery. They've been an inspiration and have mirrored what my esteemed colleagues in the Human Unleashed project and I have also been saying since March in our many COVID video discussions, which can be found at thehumanunleashed.com or here on my YouTube channel. However, I'm aware of your belief that meat and animal fats are bad for your health, and I could no longer resist seeing if I might be able to change your mind on that. I think it's essential that people with wide influence like you become aware of this very important piece of the puzzle, as it all ties in with what you have already seen in this global hoax. I totally understand how you have come to believe this dogma, though. I was caught up in it myself for 30 years, in which time I thought of myself as a diet expert. Worked with clients in my gym business with their diets, wrote many articles and even a couple of books extolling plant-based diets and warning of the dangers of meat. Fast forward to 2010 when, after a decade or more of weight gain and mounting symptoms that I ignored, I found myself suddenly crippled with psoriatic arthritis. It was the wake-up call that I needed, and to heal I had to eventually throw out all I thought I knew about diet and lifestyle and admit that I'd been completely wrong. It was a shock to realise that after those decades of studying what I thought was cutting-edge diet science, all I really had to do was to look at a cave painting to find out what has kept us healthy for millennia before the diet gurus and scientists led us astray. In those paintings, there's often one hunter, one spear and one mammoth. There's never any broccoli and certainly no wholemeal bread or quinoa. Our ancestors knew how to eat. Ancient foods do not cause modern diseases. I won't go into my story too much here as it has been well documented in my many videos and online interviews and in my 2014 Kindle bestseller, Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me, which it was, waking me up to the illusions I'd been basing my expertise on. Suffice to say that I've reversed all manner of metabolic and autoimmune issues, and these days I consult with many clients worldwide and see them doing the same. Not to mention the incredible tales of healing that I see day in and day out among the members of my social media groups and other carnivore groups, which number in the tens of thousands. As a carnivore friend of mine once said, "Isn't it funny how all the issues supposedly caused by meat and fat disappear when all you eat is meat and fat?" First, let me give a quick summary of what I've found to be true, which might sound a bit crazy, but after that I'll go into how these simple truths have been covered up by corrupt researchers, religious influence, and of course the closely linked agri and pharma companies, who, as we both know, do not have our best interests at heart. Here are the facts about meat. Good quality ruminant animal meat and fat eaten exclusively is quite possibly the most beneficial intervention one can implement on a dietary level to reverse almost all the chronic disease epidemics we are facing. We don't need the recommended 5-a-day servings of the fruit and veg available to us in supermarkets, none of which existed for 99.99% of our existence, and which, owing to the many naturally occurring plant toxins, can wreak havoc for anyone who already has a chronic condition caused by the processed grains and seed oils that make up the bulk of the standard diet that most humans eat, and which we certainly should avoid completely. In fact, we don't even need fibre of any sort. It causes most of the issues it's said to cure, which can be shown by the many people who have adopted a fully carnivore diet, including me, who are now experiencing the best digestion of our lives, along with reversal of almost every supposedly incurable disease there is. Crop agriculture is destroying the soil and ecosystems, killing billions of wild animals, and the resulting wheat, corn and soy is making humans and factory-farmed animals alike sick. Adopting a grass-fed, meat-based diet would not only be incredibly beneficial for the health of humans and animals alike, and kill the fewest wild animals, but also get rid of factory farming and the associated cruelty you are so rightly set against. What we need to restore the soil and these ecosystems, as well as giving humans back their proper nutrition, is to get the ruminant animals back on the land as nature intended. Whether people believe the climate hoax or not, the idea that burping cows are causing any trouble is utterly absurd. In fact, this kind of regenerative farming is actually carbon negative. So the narrative being pushed by Greta and the vegan horde is obviously coming from their puppeteers, the usual suspects, the big corporations. What poor Greta doesn't realise is that the very food she is railing against while she looks ever more skinny and frail is the food that would have the best chance of reversing her autism via restoring her gut integrity. Look into the work of Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride for details on that. She was dismissed as a quack 10 years ago, but nowadays the bulk of the research into autism focuses on gut health, which has a massive effect on all chronic disease and mental illness. I digress slightly, and I cannot go into all the ins and outs of the benefits of meat and regenerative farming, but I would urge you to watch the video I will link to below of Brian Sanders, the producer of the film Food Lies, astonishingly covering every salient point in only 15 minutes. So let's look at how we've been fooled into forgetting what our ancestral diet is, starting with a little bit of common sense that really should clear up any doubts for anyone if they were truly open to logic. Modern and ancestral hunter-gatherer tribes face a lot of problems, but rampant cancer, heart disease and autoimmunity are not among them. The first sign of these diseases came in about 10,000 years ago when we started farming grains, and they multiplied massively when we started eating lots of processed carbohydrates, and especially the disgusting heart-healthy high linoleic acid seed oils and margarines, starting with the development of Crisco. These oils were originally designed to lubricate machinery, and the public was led to believe they were edible by marketing campaigns and the criminal cherry-picking of information by Ancel Keys, the originator of the lipid hypothesis, upon which all our dietary guidelines since then have been based. Keys left an epidemic of obesity and illness in the wake of his unproven nonsense, and has probably indirectly killed more people than anyone in history. I'll link to a very short entertaining video excerpt below from the film Big Fat Lies that sums up his crimes. Meanwhile, John Yudkin wrote a book called Pure, White and Deadly, correctly identifying the culprit as sugar rather than saturated fat, but he was ridiculed and debunked while Keys made it onto the cover of Time magazine and was hailed as a saviour. As you well know, that sort of thing is rife right now with Fauci et al. Censoring the doctors speaking out. Does it now make sense that meat and fat cause these issues? Or is it more likely to be the frankenfoods that we started to eat when these epidemics started? You're correct that a high-fat diet containing these modern oils is troublesome. But don't lump all fats together. Animal fats are very healing. I'm amazed now that I couldn't see this all along, but I was blinded by the brainwashing coming from all sides, not least of which came from my involvement with the Transcendental Meditation movement, where the plant-based dogma was reinforced by their adherence to second-hand Hindu diet practices and their Western misinterpretation of Ayurveda, believing it to be a vegetarian science. I made a video that I will also link to below called Diet Brainwashing, Why Spiritual People Still Die of Cancer, which was a very passionate plea to my numerous vegetarian friends who are very sick, many of whom I've lost to cancer, heart disease and autoimmunity in the past few years. In fact, they have a higher percentage of these issues than the local McDonald's eaters. So it's not the meat. I will also link to a video I made, again very passionate, where I point out with semi-fictional cases the true pandemics around now. It's called Eat Fatty Meat, Get Plenty of Sun, Protect the NHS. So what in our history made us lose our way? In a word, religion. There's never been a fully vegetarian or vegan civilization in history, apart from the occasional subset influenced by gurus and religious leaders to make us docile, stupid, and impressionable by eating what, to our ancestors, was basically starvation food when game was scarce. When you see the history of this, it's hard to take plant-based propaganda seriously anymore. Modern-day vegetarianism in the West started with the visions of a crazy teenage girl in the 1800s. Seventh-day Adventist Ellen G. White, who decided that the key to health, happiness and godliness was to eat what she called a Garden of Eden diet that excluded meat, thus deranging our hormonal system and reducing sexual desire, which she considered the root of all evil. Through her misguided writings and those of her protege, the utterly insane Harvey Kellogg, and his subsequent anti-masturbation cornflake empire, this vegan dogma has filtered down to society in general, and we've all been fooled into thinking that the key to health is to eat a load of plant matter that we as a species are not adapted to. Look at the work of Dr. Gary Fettke and his wife Belinda for a deep dive on the influence of the Seventh-day Adventists. Ah yes, I hear you cry, but what about the studies? What about the WHO proving that meat is carcinogenic? Well, look a little deeper, and you'll find that those studies were inconclusive anyway, based on unreliable epidemiology that studied people who ate a regular diet. And let me stress that all modern diets, apart from fully carnivore, are plant-based. Let's take the McDonald's meal as an example. Most people, once fooled by the propaganda, would assume it's unhealthy because of the meat content. But when you see that the bun contains not only naturally toxic wheat, but also the glyphosate it was sprayed with, and the fries are a nightshade cooked in toxic seed oils, not to mention the jumbo-sized Coca-Cola, which I'm sure even you would agree should only be used for unblocking drains, it's easy to realise that the admittedly less than optimal quality beef patty is by far the least of your problems. So with these confounders, can you really trust any studies? Especially since we're seeing massive evidence of cancer reversal on 100% carnivore and ketogenic diets, including my own mother's. I'll link to a video with pictorial evidence of that below, taken from a talk I gave on carnivory to medical professionals. If we ate locally and seasonally, nobody would get sick enough to need to go fully carnivore. But what I love about the carnivore movement is that there are no confounders. Not even a sprig of oxalate-laden, kidney stone-producing kale to credit the healing to. So the full carnivore studies, which are coming, will show clear evidence that it can't possibly be meat that's causing the problems. It's even more suspicious when you understand that the majority of the WHO committee that came up with this crap are vegetarian or vegan, with ties to the Seventh-day Adventist Church that started this chaos. In fact, the decision to publish those dodgy conclusions was not unanimous. Those on the committee who were not influenced by the vegan dogma have spoken out against the findings. Have a listen to one of those honest whistleblowers, Professor David Klurfeld, in an interview with him that I will link to below as well. He was very opposed to it and called it the most frustrating professional experience of his life. And don't get me started on the dreadful cherry-picking of data and misrepresentation of indigenous diets in the China study and the books about the blue zones. That's a rant for another day. These disgracefully misleading studies are also co-opted by the vegan doctors, spreading their lies and claiming that they have science on their side, when in fact it's nothing more than scientism. You have John McDougall, who clearly hasn't taken any notice of bone isotope records and amusingly believes humans are starchivores. And how's that worked out for him? A few years ago, at a modest age, he fell over in the bathroom and shattered his pelvis, showing typical bone density issues so common amongst vegans. And the lack of good animal fats, DHA and cholesterol, so essential to our brains, has him obviously suffering from dementia, as his recent interviews tragically show. Then there's the emaciated, word-slurring Dr. Michael Greger, Saudi billionaire-backed author of the appalling collection of pseudoscience, How Not to Die, and the originator of the gut-ripping, toxin-loaded, daily dozen bowel movements diet. How anyone can even look at Greger and think he knows anything about diet is a mystery to me. He is emaciated as his body auto-cannibalizes itself in search of nutrients. He wears bottle-bottom thick glasses, has liver spots at age 47, and the skin on his hands is parchment thin, as if it were on a 95-year-old woman's. He's just over 10 years younger than me. Finally, there's Dr. Michael Clapper, who doesn't look too well either, and who came out with the hilarious concept that the reason vegans fart a lot is not because all that indigestible cellulose is fermenting in their guts and warning them that they aren't eating suitable food, but because they swallow a lot of air when they eat. Now that's true science. I could go on and on about vegan doctors, but that'll do. They're duping countless young, impressionable people into years of ill health and even militancy about issues they do not understand. Believe me, I get my fair share of attacks and death threats from those ensnared by the tentacles of this dangerous cult. That is until their health fails, and then they often come to me for help, which I'm glad to give. And many become good friends, and I get the honour of watching their healing journeys. Actually, many of we carnivores are ex-vegans and vegetarians and have been through every diet under the sun before turning carnivore. Most who do test are now returning beautiful blood results and totally clear coronary artery calcium scans. So is it just me and a few other nutcases who have come to the conclusion that a meat-only diet, or a ketogenic diet that's very close to it, is healthy? Nope. Setting aside the many cultures who have thrived on a diet of almost exclusively meat, there is a huge tide of doctors and researchers looking into the actual science, which is out there, and interpreting the old science correctly to show in detail why it's absolutely unreliable. Google a few carnivore or keto doctors and see what healthy, robust specimens they are compared to the zombie-like plant-based docs, and then tell me who you'd follow for diet advice, if you are logical and open-minded. They're having such spectacular results with their patients that they're inspired to speak out despite terrible pressure and censorship from the establishment. Does that sound familiar in this COVID day and age? To find out more about this, perhaps look at the thousands of case histories, testimonials, and links to studies on Dr. Sean Baker's MeatRx website, or listen to a few podcasts with Dr. Paul Saladino and his many guests who go deeper into the science than anyone, and always refer to the studies. Also very convincing is the work done by my good friend Dr. Zsofia Clements at Paleomedicina in Hungary, where they're having incredible results with thousands of patients on a high-fat carnivore diet and showing that the gut never truly heals when there is even a small amount of plant matter left in the diet. They do this via PEG tests, gut permeability tests. Very accurate. See some links below for all of these wonderful doctors. And then, of course, there's the huge subject of deuterium and its role in damaging mitochondria. Even most of the carnivore and keto doctors are yet to discover this, but my friend Dr. László Boros, perhaps the leading deuterium researcher in the world, cured his own cancer on a low deuterium, high-fat, meat-heavy diet after his twin brother, also a doctor, died from his after going the chemo route. If you look into deuterium, it is just another way of understanding how meat can heal and plants can hurt. I will link below to a short intro video I made on it with links to László's longer explanation below that, which I really recommend watching. Fantastic. I think if you can find time to have a look at those, with your medical knowledge and scientific mind, it might be the clincher. I still listen to such geniuses for hours every day and pick up many tips, but most of the deep science goes in one ear and out the other. I just take away the information that shows why my clients and social media members are all getting well, and why I'm still alive and thriving without any plants for 5 years. The implementation of this is, like all things in nature before humans overcomplicate them, very, very simple. If anything the vegan docs or even regular dietitians say were true, I'd have been dead long ago, instead of thriving, especially considering how ill I was going into it from my decades of vegetarianism and veganism. And another thing that might give you pause for thought is considering who else is pushing this plant-based agenda. None other than our favourite Uncle Billy Gates. If we let him get away with his dangerous vax, we might just open the door for him to have us all existing on processed, soy-based vegan kibble like him. And probably all end up with his soggy physiology and expanding waistline too. The only benefit to Bill Gates being plant-based is that it might just see him off before he can murder billions to add to the hundreds of thousands he has already paralysed and killed. So although I could waffle on, I think I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening to a middle-aged man perched on an uncomfortable swivel chair. I do hope that you will take time to look into some of the rabbit holes I've linked to below, and that in time you might join us as one of our guests on The Human Unleashed for a good old rant about the powers that shouldn't be, and hopefully by then your change of heart about our ancestral diet. All the best, sir.